We were going to talk about aesthetics and design. Hello. But we talked about that last week and it's all finished. It's not finished. You need to think about it more and think about how those basics of design and principle of designs you can incorporate in your instrument and the sounds you're making and the videos you're making. So please keep it in mind for the next 5 weeks. Okay. This was a hard decision to make because I know some of you do know what a lot of these effects are and what is electronic music, but just so that you know, you can do these in Faust. And just a refresher for those who don't know, so we can just kind of go through it for 30 minutes. And then after that, we're going to pause. I'm going to give you 7 minutes. You're going to brainstorm what your final project instrument is going to be, and we're going to talk about it so that you keep going. We have 5 more weeks, and that is nothing. Like if you want to do, and we have assignments every week, so you need to start the engine. Electronic music, any piece that uses electronics is called electronic music, from the electric guitar, the synthesizer used, the tape recorder, use a microphone, use the speakers, all of those things fall under electronic music. I just said what electronic music is. It started from the 19th century. 19th century, people started wanting to make sounds through mechanical or electrical means. The first instrument was called a telharmonium. It was basically an electric organ. And then that evolved. They make synthesizers when they could use oscillators and filters. And until we come today and we have the computers and we can make literally with this, we can move anywhere and make the sounds that we need to make. Current tools are all the DAWs, the digital audio workstations we use, the synthesizers, tape recorder, Faust, Max MSP, if you've heard about it, Chalk, everything. All these are tools that we have at our disposal. And you never have to stick to one. You can combine all these 10,000 tools that we have together to make what you want artistically and creatively. When you're making your electronic pieces or your instruments, you want to think about what are your sound sources. So you can use presets that exist in the hardware that you get or in your computers. They exist there, they're for you to use. You have the sample banks. Best sample bank you can find, they're not banks, but go to freesound.org and find any sound source you want. You can use it in your program and it's free to use. Some of them require you to give them credit, but a lot of them you just grab and use it. Anything you want, it can be wind sound, it can be children laughing, it can be whispering, concerts, tuning, anything you want, it is there. Just search for it. And recordings. You can just go outside and record the sound you want. Phones are actually pretty good now. So not every phone, but a lot of the new iPhones, when you record it on the voice memo thing, it's actually high quality. It is not bad. So take that, combine it with the sounds you find, combine it with the synthesizers, and make what you need. A lot of you combine oh, Rachel is not here. In her video, the 3D printer was running in the Max Lab. So she took the 3D printer sound and combined it with her synthesizer. So yeah, something to think about. Synthesis, we all know what synthesis is by now, that you've been using the oscillators and everything in Faust. Different ways of making synthesizers. We have 4 different kind of making synthesis. One is additive. So you add different kind of oscillators together and sine waves to make the sound timbre that you want. You have subtractive synthesis. You take away things that you don't want. So you usually start with a audio signal that is rich. It has a lot of frequency content. And you take away what you don't want through filters. And then you have frequency modulation, that you have one signal, the carrier signal, and then you have the modulating signal, and that manipulates this one, and then the result is a new kind of sound. And all these are in FOUS. So if you go and try to figure out, like to explore with it, change different parameters, have different oscillators together with different waveforms, you will see how timbrally they're different and how you can add different sounds to your instrument. So you have like one smooth sound and you have one harsher sound. You have one that is like random and noisy. One is like smooth and calming. So you can, when you're using your instrument, you can afford to play different variety of sounds. Oh, and then there's wavetable synthesis, which instead of oscillators, basically use single cycle of waves, and yeah, you don't use the oscillators. Instead of the mathematic function, you have the wavetable, and they're previously stored in this table that you can access it. We talked about oscillators, filters. Filters, we remove the sounds we don't want, we highlight the sounds that we want. Both filters and envelopes are ways to shape your sound that you want. Everything in nature has an envelope. It attacks, it decays. A sound that just doesn't start and end. I mean, starts and ends, but there's a shape to it. LFOs, low frequency oscillators, anything, it's usually under 20 hertz. They're not mainly used to make sounds, but they're used for manipulating and modulating other parameters, like the pitch, the timbre, the amplitude. You use the LFOs to control other parameters. Questions? No. Effects. This is it. We have 5 types of effects. We have the modulation effects. I'm going to throw all the effects and we will try it with sound so you can hear what it is. So it's just not text and it's not, oh, what is it? I mainly put this effects that you can find in FOUS as a function, already made function. But if you learn the basic of each effect, you can go and create it yourself, because one of you was asking me. I don't know who it was. Modulation effects, you change the signal and you play with the phase. Time-based, you play with time and how one perceives each sound. The time of the signal changes. Spectral effects, you change the frequencies, manipulate them, and the sound spectrum and the qualities of each sound. You have dynamic, which is the amplitude, the loudness, the quietness of sounds. And then you have filters that we just talked about. High pass, low pass bandwidth. There's 2 more. These are other, if you go to the, here. I want to, if you go to the FOUS library index, you can go through all this, and then everything that I'm talking about, like compressions, you have all these kinds that you can go, and I will describe what they do and how you can use it. Some of them are less intuitive than the others, but the only way to know it is just to put it in, try it the simplest way you can. Just take the first demo, the sawtooth one that we started the class with, the course, and just put different things on it and see how happens. Like here, the quantization. Quantization basically means you have notes and values, usually MIDI notes, and you put it in a grid so you can access it easier, which is kind of cool. Like, where is it? Like, if you know music modes, like there's already like a built-in function that you can use, like Dorian mode. It gives you the ratios of what each note in a Dorian mode is and its scale is, and then you access it. So use this. It's okay if you like, if you want a Dorian mode, don't go write it yourself. I mean, if you want to write it and like do it from the scratch, do it, but like these exist for you to use. And then we have automation tools, which, where does it? Well, let's see. It's in the basic category that you can automate like any value. And like if you have a slider and you drag your slider like up and down, you do it like you can't tell how many items to memorize, you do it and it's automated. So you can just leave that and then go do something else with your knob and then do something else. And then you have all these layers. I mean, yeah, sometimes don't have too much layers, but there's that for you to use. And then you have mixing, how much like the effects that you have, you want to use. They're all, these exist in the effect here. Like how much of it you can manipulate it. Maybe you're performing, you have a knob to say like how I'm going to change how much reverb I have, or like I have these like 3 chains of effects, but I want to control them by a master knob. So just use this function. And then noise. I really like the noise functions. They have like, you get all kind of noise that you can manipulate and combine it with your synthesizer. And then you have like the whole spectrum of like sounds. Some of these like categories are easier to work with. Like the basics, you can go and find like different kind of, basically things that you want to like a cycle, a beat, everything that is considered as basic. I don't know what defines a basic function, but you should go through it and just play around. And if you don't know what it is, like this is the Yamaha, I didn't know what it means, but like you go out, you go in it and you say like Yamaha, and then you will figure it out what it is. Just go explore. Okay. Questions? Oh, I want to show you different sounds of noise. Yeah. Noise has different colors. We have white noise, pink noise, blue noise, brown noise that comes from the Brownian motion. Okay. Oh, sorry.
Are those like things that you can just call on the house, or you have to filter it yourself?
You can call it like there's the violet. Yeah, there should be. There's white noise, there's violet noise, there's like, let's go back. There's a whole noise category. There's ambisonics if you want to use, I think somewhere. Here. You have your velvet noise, your pink noise, I think this is a granular noise, different kind of low filter noise, random, all these noises that you can use and combine together. Any other questions? Some of you come to office hours and ask like, how do we make good music? Like, I don't have the answer to that. But it's mainly just listen. I made this playlist. You can go as electronic music. It's from like the very first electronic music to ones that are like very contemporary and very weird. Some of them I do not like, but like they're important to listen. And just scan it, go listen to it. It's on Spotify. So there's like 50 songs, and yeah, there's some pretty cool ones. You got it all? Okay. I hope this gives you an idea what you have, and then now I'm going to go through. Yes. It's being recorded, but I don't see anybody on Zoom unless I put the wrong Zoom one. Which? They should go to the event that is on the calendar, because this Zoom link is different from the one that you might have used like 2 weeks ago. Thanks, Julia. Okay. I'm going to demo all these sounds, and the reason I'm using Ableton is because it's faster for me to demo it to you than like if I had made. So this is easier right now, but you can do all these things. These are all things that exist in Faust. And if you go under the library, you can find all of them. Okay. I brought the wrong controller, so I can't bear with me a bit. We're going to start with time-based effects, which we have reverb, delay, and echo. Reverb comes from reverberation, the early, like every sound, when it goes into a space, it has reflections. And when we use reverb effect, we get an idea of what kind of a space we are in. Okay, let's see. We have a cricket sound, and then we send it to delay. With the delay, oh, I said, maybe this is not the best sound to. Okay, let's try. You have this. And then when you have the reverb, you can choose like, how big the room size is, how long it takes to fade out. Like some of these ignore these parts, but like you can define this size. You can use dry wet, how much of the dry signal you're getting, how much of the wet signal you're getting, how much you're diffusing it, how it's being reflected. All these can be configured, but this is the gist of a reverb effect. And then we have delay, which is the exact, it's repeating the signal in time, and you can tell delay how many times it's being repeated, what's the difference between each repetition. Here. Yeah. And honestly, you might not know what you're doing and what parameters you're changing, but when you're changing it, you'll get an idea of it. And the only way to know it is just playing around with it. You can read 10,000 textbooks. Again, if you don't put your hands on it, you don't work with it, you don't listen to it, you wouldn't know. And then we have echo, which is again another time-based, but it's basically delaying the signal. Yes. Yes. So the dry signal is the signal which has no effects, is the signal as it is. And the wet signal is what it has the effect on it. And then you can have like 50% effect on it, and then like 100%. And there's actually a Faust function that has dry wet signal that you can tell it how much effect you have on it. Yeah. Echo. I don't know what I have to. Oh, I know why. So basically, echo, like delay, is repeating. You're hearing the duplication of a sound, a signal in space, but then it fades out. So it replicates more of a natural space than delay. Delay is like exactly the same, but echo would phase out. Like if you hear it. But you can do. I've turned down everything, but it's still being echoed in space. The signal is not going, but it's still being played because I had a long feedback and didn't. It was supposed to go longer. Yeah. You can still hear it because it has been delayed very in an exaggerated way. Next, any questions on the time-based stuff? No, cool. Next, we have the modulation effects, which is like the flanger, the tremolo, and the phaser. So flanger, when you work with flangers, when you hear it, you will know what a flanger is, like any other of these events. But at some point, people use it a lot, which is a, I don't know, I don't like flangers. You have basically two signals, and one is slightly slower than the other one, and slower and modulated version of the other one. So I think I need to change the sound because it's kind of annoying. No, but this is the best one to know. You get it. Phaser, similar to flanger, two signals, but one is slightly played later in time, like, but very subtly. So they're out of phase basically. So the highs and the lows, the amplitude does not line up when you have two signals. Yeah. And you have the LFO to manipulate it even further. Yeah. And then you have the tremolo. Tremolo is amplitude modulation. So you're basically rapidly changing the amplitude of a signal. You might have heard tremolo on a violin, like it's like very fast movement, but you're basically playing around with the amplitude, the loudness. Okay. What's happening? Tremolos are usually more subtle. So this is yeah. And then you have compressor. Compressor doesn't really add like amberly different, but it changes the dynamic. So you're limiting the dynamic range of an audio signal. So usually you put compression to avoid like any peaking or just having a healthier signal, but keep in mind like your dynamic will be, it will be limited, but like very subtly, like, I don't know, I can't tell really, but like my ears maybe shouldn't be reliable, but it depends how much compression you put. So that it tries to make a more equal loudness among different kind of amplitudes, dynamics. I don't know if you can tell the difference. You can, I mean, let's, if I put it very loud. It's getting only louder because it's going through that, but you see quieter sounds are getting louder. So everything basically becomes a bit more equal. Like you will lose like contrast if you put it to extreme, but like a healthy amount of compression is good and needed. Yeah. And then we have distortion. Both compression and distortion are you play with the amplitude, and distortion in the Faust, I don't think it's labeled as distortion, it's labeled as where is the distortion? Yeah, I think these two. I think one of them is this that does distortion for you. Oh, okay.
Hello.
Wrong one. I'll put it, I don't know. Wait. Yeah. Here, no. This produces some sort of a distortion, the bit crusher. It's kind of cool, to be honest. It's like your resolution gets grainier, and if you want a dirty sounds, use it. And then the other one was, what was the other one? Like this one. Maybe here is this one. So yeah, if we hear it, and some distortions are intentional, some bad. If you are using distortion, make sure it is perceived intentional, and it's not that like, oh, you didn't know how to like put compression. If you don't, like, if it's distorted, then it's like bad quality, but if it's intentionally distorted, then we know that it's like a creative choice. Everything you do, try to make it intentional, like sound it intentional. Okay, which one is this? H. Oh no. There we go. It's debatable. It's like what context you're using, Gejman. Oops, I should have done this. Okay. Filters, we've talked about it so many times, but here, we're gonna sing this. Which was it? Filter. Yeah. And then we have gates, which are basically, it's like a compression when you're like people talk and everything. So compression like brings down, that doesn't let go like higher amplitude go out, but like noise gates, like if the sound is below a certain decibel amplitude, it wouldn't let it come through. So usually like in lectures, talks, there are like noise cancellation, noise gates. In Zoom, like the musician off, that's basically a gate. It doesn't, I don't know if you've tried to play music over Zoom, like if you have an instrument, they usually won't hear it. But if you turn on the musician sound on, it will let all sounds to come through. There's a practical reason to use gates and there's an artistic ways to use gate. You can give like stroke effects, like if you want to stutter effects. And there are multiple kind of gates, I think, in Faust. Is it? Okay. You can play with the threshold, like I don't know, this used to work better. So you see how there's drops in the sound here? So you can play around with it and make it seem like you can use it in like compositional ways rather than just a functional way. And then we have EQ. With EQ, you're playing around with the amplitude of different frequencies. You simply like you can cut some frequencies, make frequencies higher. People like in mixing and mastering, well, mastering mainly, like they play around with EQ to make it sound better. Some frequencies don't need to be higher. Like some frequencies we can't even hear. So if they exist, they just make your signal like dirtier. So you don't need it. But then like the gate, instead of like you having it just as a functional medium, you can use it as our creative way. And you can just like decrease. Like it works a bit like a filter, you're eliminating frequencies, but you can be more specific. You can turn on like different nodes. You can do all this stuff. And you just like say, I want to hear a lot of this. And you can shape the sound that you want and you make the timbre that you really need in your instrument. And then I talked about filters and then vocoders. There are vocoders in Faust that you have like a modulator. You take the properties of one signal and modulate it and turn it into another signal, which is usually the human voice. So you have this and then. Um, okay, questions?
Can you just play the original sound again?
Yeah. And then it matters, like when you're making it, you're putting your effect chain, matters what effect comes before each effect and what comes after. Because if an effect comes in after, you're telling like they have gone through processing, so you are processing the affected instrument, the sound. And then like you can combine all of these together. And then get all those sounds. Another thing I forgot to mention is that you can get sounds, like if you're working MIDI and you want a melody that you want to steal somebody else's melody, there are MIDI files and like on the web, MIDI World and BitMidi are websites that you can go and you can download MIDI files for free. Like, oh my God, don't. Okay. Like you can get the files and then. Change it and remix it to a whole other sound by using different synthesizers. Everything makes sense? Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Using the master channel.
Because I was planning to send it also to a pre-master that I have all my effect chains here. So they go here and then go to my master. So if I want to do manipulated here and other things are going to here, I don't have to change. Yeah, just easier. And then here I can I basically make an effect chain rather than like sending it to sends. They're like all going through this and then go out to masters, which will sound differently. Good question. Yeah. Okay. If you don't have any questions, you will get 7 minutes to crash brainstorm your instrument, and then I'm going to use a randomizer. I'm going to call your name. I'm not going to wait for volunteers. Based on experience, volunteers never come. So you're going to need to tell us about it. And you need to think about, where's the why mainly. And how, don't focus on the how, we will figure out the how later, but figure out what you're making and why you're making it. Like if you want to make something like this again, but why are you want to make it something that exists already? Are you going to change it? Are you going to add something to it? So 7 minutes starts now. And I think you're a small group enough that we will go through all of you, so just work.